Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Coach Pete podcast. Now today's topic is going to be about exercise and how exercise can help people with depression and anxiety. Now before I get into any detail here, I'm just going to give you a statistic which is quite relevant, I think. Did you know that 1 in 8 New Zealand men will experience serious depression during their lifetime? So the reason I mention that is that chances are you might know someone, whether it's a co-worker, family friend, an acquaintance, who is currently battling with depression or anxiety, or maybe you are, or maybe you have experienced it. So it's something which could be a lot closer to home than many people realise. Now, depression is much more than just having a low mood or feeling sad. It is a serious illness which often does need some sort of professional treatment or help for people to manage their way through it. And people with depression often find it hard to function. It can have a really serious effect on a person's physical and mental health. And fortunately, mental health is something that men are generally getting a little bit better at talking about. And particularly for things off the back like Movember, which it's November here, so that's partly why I'm doing this. But it is a topic which I did want to talk about anyway. It's something which I have been affected by, which I'll go into detail a wee bit later on. And just coming back to talking about it, I think a lot of it comes back to culture. Now, I didn't grow up in New Zealand. I grew up in Scotland and Glasgow, which does have a bit of a hard man reputation. And unfortunately, when I was growing up, I would say that that reputation was still quite prevalent. And I don't really remember guys talking about how they felt. So for me personally, I grew up where it was a bit of a stigma. As a man, you didn't talk about your feelings, you didn't talk about if you were happy or sad, if you were battling things or not. So, as I say, it's partly the reason why I've decided to broach this topic in this podcast. So, depression and anxiety, they will affect how people feel, they will affect how people think, behave, they will affect how people react with others. So it is important that men feel comfortable enough to talk about it, whether that's to their partners, their spouses, their mates, or maybe even the GP. It's very important that people feel comfortable to talk about it in order to get some help to work their way through it. It's anxiety and depression is one of the most common mental illnesses. Now, as I mentioned there, I've experienced with that myself, and particularly with me, it was anxiety. Now, anxiety often goes hand in hand with depression. And now, what is anxiety? Now, for me, it was a little bit more than feeling stressed or feeling like you couldn't cope from day to day. There was actually some sort of physical symptoms with it as well. So for me, it would be waking up in the morning, and I definitely have this really horrible feeling in your guts where it's a physical sensation, but it also goes hand in hand with a mental sensation. And for me, it would be waking up feeling this really kind of overwhelming feeling of doom, which it's not a very pleasant thing to experience. So it's really hard to get up and get motivated and get moving. So for me, yeah, I did experience that, and it was really horrible. And with that as well, you could get stomach cramps, and I didn't actually have that, but other things could be like you feel the pounding of your heart, and there were times where I did feel that. So it is a physical sensation as well as mental. And anxiety can be constant. It can really, really wear away at you, and it can eat at you for right through the day. So again, it is important to recognise the symptoms of it and to seek help if you are experiencing it. It is important to say, though, that everyone does experience strong feelings, whether it's tension, fear or sadness at times. And it's important to sometimes maybe acknowledge that if it is really interfering with your day-to-day behaviour, that it might be something more than just a low-level feeling caused by something in the present. So mental illness, whether it's anxiety or depression, these are feelings which can be so overwhelming or disturbing that they will have a great effect on how you can manage your day-to-day. So it could really affect how you manage your work. It could affect how you manage your leisure time, or how it interferes with your relationships. So there's a lot of factors which can trigger or influence depression and anxiety. So I'm going to run through some of the main triggers here. So it could be physical health problems. So whether that could be like a chronic illness, maybe something like back pains or something debilitating, which prevents you from leading the life that you would like to lead. That could lead to it. It could be relationship problems, whether that's with your family, your mother, your father, siblings, kids. Any kind of relationship problem can be quite a negative effect on someone. It could be employment problems. Maybe you have a job you don't like, but you still got to go up and go through the grind of working 40 hours a week in a job which is crushing you. It could be soul destroying, and that's really not a pleasant situation to be in. It could be off the back of maybe some drug or alcohol consumption, or it could be social isolation. Perhaps you don't have very many friends. Again, for me personally, I'm an introvert. That's where I sit in the spectrum, and there are times where I've kind of found that it's hard to make friends, particularly when you move to a new country. It can be quite hard, and that's one of the contributing factors which I think had an effect in me developing a bit of anxiety. Or it could be just a significant change in your living situation, whether it's separation or divorce. And again, personally for me, it was a combination of factors. It was a breakdown of a marriage. It was moving to a new country, so moving from Scotland to New Zealand. Very similar cultures, but enough of a strangeness to make it feel like it takes a while to assimilate. And having moved here, and then not long after experienced an earthquake and breakdown of a marriage, within the first year of moving here, I found myself living by myself, and I didn't have family here, and I didn't have any friends. Actually, if you come to think of it, I didn't have any genuine friends who I felt like I could speak to. So that is really what was a big contributing factor for me. But unfortunately, I didn't actually acknowledge it at the time. I didn't address it, and instead I just focused on work. And there was a bit of necessity there as well. I was living alone. I had to really I didn't have anyone to rely on, so I really didn't have a choice but to get my head down and work hard. So for a period of time there, where I should have, in hindsight, addressed it and maybe sought some help, I just buried it. And I think some of that goes back to the culture that I grew up in, where guys didn't really talk about things like that, and you were seen as a little bit soft to really acknowledge that you were suffering from some sort of mental health issue. So yeah, not ideal. So there are other things which you can do to help work through that, as well as exercise. So obviously staying fit is a good thing, staying healthy is a good thing, maybe making sure that your nutrition is good. Reducing your alcohol consumption is good as well. And from a personal point of view, I went through a phase where when I was suffering quite bad anxiety in the evenings, struggling to sleep, I would crack open a few bottles of beer or red wine and use that as a bit of a crutch to help de-stress me. But the flip side of that is, and I really did notice this, is that it actually makes my anxiety worse. So in the mornings where I'd been drinking, I'd wake up, the anxiety would be much more intense. And for several reasons, there's probably a physical element to it as well. You're slightly affected by the booze in your system, but there's also mental as well, where you'd feel a little bit kind of pissed off with yourself that you did that in the first place, and there's a bit of guilt wrapped in there as well. So yeah, lesson learned, don't abuse booze if you're going through a bit of anxiety or depression. Getting sleep's important. If you don't sleep enough, that is quite detrimental in general, but it can have quite a big impact if you are battling with some sort of other mental illness as well. Making sure you get a balance in your life and you're not just always working, but there is some sort of downtime, there is time for your pursuits, your hobbies and stuff, and that's important. So it helps you manage your stress and being able to identify how, if there is any kind of imbalance in there as well. Making time to spend with people that you like and trust is important. So it is good to maybe have a couple of close friends who you do feel you've got each other's back and you can confide in. But like I say, from my experience, that kind of caught me at a time where, not through a fault of my own, it was quite hard to do that and didn't actually have many people to fall back on. And other things that can help would just be developing skills like problem solving and developing an ability to communicate properly and help others to understand how you are feeling. So yeah, just to backtrack a little bit, just from my own perspective, I did experience quite a bit of anxiety And as I say, I buried it, I masked it for a long time. Just get my head down, plough down. I ended up in another relationship which, for no fault of that person himself, I hadn't dealt with things, and inevitably that fell apart. A large part due to me not dealing with my mental health issues, but a huge part of that was this kind of overwhelming anxiety, which, if you haven't experienced it before, it can be quite crippling at times, and it's really soul-sucking to the point where it's quite difficult just to get through your day-to-day. But I'm glad to say these days that I'm in a much, much better place. But one of the things which actually did help me just function almost through, and it was a couple of years, maybe 2, 3, even 4 years, where I was really feeling like this was affecting me, was the fact that I was exercising. For me, that provided quite a lot of framework. It was a lot of good things that came from the exercise. One of the main things you will get from that is that you'll hear people talk about endorphins, or the releasing of feel-good endorphins. And that is something which does happen when you exercise. You'll get it quite often if you're running, maybe at a certain intensity or a certain duration, you get something called a runner's high. But for me, I got it from weightlifting or from strength training. I found that by going to the gym and completing a workout, somewhere during that workout there would be some sort of sense of wellness or satisfaction which were tied into probably those endorphins, which would generally make me feel incredibly better than I did prior to getting to the gym. And for quite often, the hardest bit was often getting my shoes on and actually getting my arse out the door and getting to the gym. Once I was in there, I knew that I went through my mobility drill, I go through my warm-up sets. By that point, I was actually starting to feel okay. But those endorphins, it's quite interesting. I was reading something recently where it's actually saying that the endorphins you get from exercise, they're very, very similar to the brain chemicals you get from smoking cannabis, and they actually trigger similar, if not the same, receptors in your brain. So you get the same kind of chemicals which you would get from cannabinoids, producing that kind of sense of wellness. So that's quite interesting, I think, and that's maybe something which in the long term might be researched a little bit better and could produce some sort of some help of some sort for people. So yeah, interesting there that you'll get that same, not well, let's say high of sorts, but you'll get it naturally from exercising, and that's definitely something which I experienced. So as well as the endorphins, you'll get that cascading effect where, yeah, you get your endorphins better, you'll probably feel better that you've done something, there's always a sense of satisfaction that you've overcome a bit of a hurdle. There's all the other benefits where it will help improve your sleep. Exercise in general is good for heart health, it's good for diabetes, it's good for lowering blood pressure, and if you've listened to one of my earlier podcasts on cortisol, it's a really good way to manage that stress hormone, cortisol. So definitely exercise is such a positive thing. Now you don't need to work hard. For me, I'm somebody who has always exercised, so I'm probably fortunate in a respect where I always had that as a framework to fall back on. But if you're new to it, or you're somebody who doesn't exercise very often, it doesn't need to be something which is too regimented. In fact, it could be detrimental if you approach it and there's it's a barrier of sorts where you feel like you need to follow a particular regime of exercise. So for some people, exercise could just be putting your shoes on and going for a walk. For others, it might be decide to go for a run, or for other people, it could be that you decide to actually follow some sort of more regimented workout. Now, another big benefit of exercise and the brain here is that people who are depressed or have anxiety tend to have a smaller hippocampus in your brain. So that's the part of your brain which does produce a lot of the stress hormones, and it can also help regulate your mood and stuff. So it's actually been found by neuroscientists that people who suffer depression could actually have an atrophied hippocampus, which is, it kind of makes sense. If that part of your brain isn't working as much or isn't working as effectively, it may just kind of atrophy slightly. But here's the good thing: exercise, and exercise in general, can actually help the production of new brain cells, and that's a process called neurogenesis. and that can actually stimulate your hippocampus to function properly by regenerating new nerve cell connections, which will go a long way to help relieve depression. So I think this is a bit of an emerging science which hasn't been fully embraced so far. So it's kind of in the fringes, I think, but it is definitely something which I think is going to be more prevalent in the future. So the takeaway from that is that exercise in terms of like physical help, yeah, you'll get all the kind of low-lying things which will help ward off like diabetes. It will maintain heart health. It will help you lower your cortisol levels, but you'll get the double whammy where if you do it at a proper intensity, you also get the infected endorphins, where you get this slightly kind of positive high feeling, which will definitely boost your mood and get you feeling so much better. But long term, if you do it consistently, you could actually go some ways to actually improving your cognitive health, so that you're less likely to suffer from it again, or that when you do suffer from it, you'll be more likely to handle it, because your brain, your hippocampus is a lot stronger than it would have been if you had not exercised. So a lot of other benefits to exercise, and these are things which some things which I found is it will take your mind off of worries. And for me, suffering from anxiety, a lot of it was that I was running a lot of bad scenarios in my head. I'd find a lot of the time where I would be almost just drive myself to despair, thinking of all the negative possible outcomes, not things that had actually happened, but more thinking like 10 steps ahead as to how things could get worse. And it's a horrible mindset. It's almost like this horrible downward spiral you can get yourself caught in. But I did find that by me taking the time to go to the gym, maybe spend an hour or two there, that in that moment my focus was more about I'm warming up, I'm squatting, I've got to think about my breathing, I'm thinking about weights, or what I'm going to lift. So it became a real positive distraction, and it took my mind off a lot of the worries. And to some ways, it actually reset me for the day. And I would often try and get it done early in the day as well, so that after that initial wake up where you just feel it in the pit of your stomach, things are horrible, you would get your exercise in, and I would definitely feel so much better off the back of that. And what I would do, I initially used to listen to music. I'd listen to a lot of the rock music and stuff, but what I noticed is because I wasn't really in a good mindset prior to it, the music I was listening to wasn't particularly uplifting. I was listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails and like Depeche Mode. Nothing against those bands, two of my favourite bands, but they're not exactly the most upbeat things to listen to. So what I decided to do instead was listen to podcasts. And part of the process for me, where I kind of helped get myself to a stage where I was a lot healthier mentally, was trying to understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. So a lot of the podcasts I listened to were things about psychology or about mental health or just about health in general. So I used it for two purposes. I was getting to the gym, so I was switching off mentally from the negative mindset, but I was also using that time to try and listen to things or educate myself as to why I was feeling that way and try and better myself and get through that and try and battle my own demons. So other benefits, which again were good and I can relate to myself, is you will gain confidence. Now at the time I was doing that, I was doing a lot of strength training. I was oddly enough training to compete at a national competition for powerlifting. So there was I was beating a lot of new personal bests at the time. I had a good training plan, which another coach helped me develop. So I wasn't just lifting, but I was actually exceeding what I was doing before, and that was really, really empowering. It was something that made me feel a lot better. Now, like I say, I'm somebody who's exercised for 20 plus years, so I don't expect everyone to necessarily come in at that level. In fact, it'd be quite unrealistic for you to do so. But you will gain confidence, and take confidence from getting a workout in. That in itself is good, whether it's a 20-minute workout on a bike, or you go for a walk, or you get to the gym and you push some weights. It doesn't matter if you're only comparing yourself to you and who you were the day before. And yeah, take the small wins where you can. And it might be as well that, as well as your performance in the gym, which you should see improve, you'll start to feel better physically, and you maybe look a little bit different, and those are things which you should take pride in as well. And another thing for me, and this is probably something that's played a big part in my life for the last 20 years, is is the social interaction you get from being in most gyms. So most gyms tend to be quite social places. You'll always have people floating about, whether it's staff or other gym members, who are always quite keen to give you a friendly nod, or a smile, or a chat as well. And I think that's a positive thing. So get in there, and a lot of people these days, I notice, they kind of bury themselves in their headphones. But look around. Most people at the gym for similar reasons. They might be in there because they want to improve their lives, they want to feel better, and who knows? Chances are that some of those dudes you're looking at might also be battling their own demons. So give them a smile, give them a nod. You never know. You guys might just be helping each other out. And another thing for me is that what I found was that the exercise, it gave me structure to my day, so that I knew, like, a week before, Monday I'd be doing a particular set of exercises, Tuesday it would be something else, Wednesday it would be this. So for me, I was looking forward to getting through that. But I also knew that because I was working towards a particular goal, for me it was a competition, I would be aiming to lift particular weights on the day. So to do that, I needed to sleep. So it made me go to bed at a reasonable time, and it made me address any kind of sleep issues I had. And it also meant that I couldn't drink too much piss. So I couldn't really drink too much, because I knew that if I did that, I'd be hungover. I wouldn't perform well in the day. So it did provide structure and framework, and I guess a sense of purpose, which did keep me in the straight and narrow, and also made me eat healthy as well, because let's be honest, you can't really eat too crappy and then go and lift heavy weights the next day. So in many ways, I feel really fortunate that I'm someone who has exercised for a long time, and I already had a lot of that framework set up, so that when I was going through that couple of years where I was battling with that anxiety, I often think, what would happen if I didn't have that? And I really don't know. I feel like I don't know if I'd get through it. I might have been in a much worse place than I am now. So I do feel grateful that was something I had in my life, and it's part of the reason why I decided to do these podcasts, is that I want to spread the word and really just get more people to embrace the positive benefits of exercise, whether it's physical or mental, or something as simple as providing structure and purpose in your day. So in terms of what exercise you should do, like I say, it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It could just be going for a walk. It doesn't need to be a formal exercise. It doesn't need to be a rigid exercise regime. Anything that gets you moving is generally going to make you feel better. So it could be physical activity where you just get your body moving. You could put your shoes on, go for a walk up a hill. Maybe you do some sort of physical task, whether it's gardening or doing some work in your car, but just getting moving is good. And the chances are that just by moving 10, 20, 30 minutes, you will feel better than you did had you not done that. And the other side of that is you maybe have some planned exercise, whether it's structure, there's repetitive body movement, and you're doing it towards a particular goal and some sort of structure. So again, that can be really useful. And my experience is that the structure was good because it kept me within a certain framework, which prevented me from going too crazy in terms of going off the rails with drink or just not sleeping or bad behaviour. So the takeaway from that is exercise is awesome. There is a lot of the benefits you'll get from that are just the general kind of health things, but it doesn't need to be that you get to the gym and you've got to go and bust your balls for some crazy workout. Even just getting to the gym and moving is good. Take it as a win. I mean, a lot of people I see at the gym, and I'm speaking to them in consultations, the first goal I set for them was just to come in 3 times a week, come in twice a week. It doesn't matter as long as it's an improvement in what you were doing the week before. So don't set yourself such a high target that in itself becomes unattainable and can compound negative feelings. So in terms of how much is enough, I reckon 30 minutes a day is enough for most people. And even just doing that 3 times a day, 30 minutes 3 times a week will significantly improve symptoms of anxiety and depression. Even smaller amounts, as little as 10, 15 minutes, will make a big difference as to how you feel in the day. But like I say, the hardest part can often just be getting off the couch, out of bed, or putting your shoes on. But trust me, it's worth doing. Once you do that, you will feel so much better. So yeah, If you can stick to it, I mean, exercise, like I say, for me, it was always something in the background, and I think it really did help me manage that a lot better than I would have otherwise. So this may be something which is new to you, but I would encourage you to try and make it a regular component of your life so that it does enrich your life to the extent where it's a framework for you to follow. It keeps you sleeping better, it keeps you eating better, it maybe stops you abusing drug or alcohol as much, and it would just make life in general a little bit easier. But like I say, sometimes the hardest part is just getting started, and that's where people like myself and other trainers, we come in handy. We will help you, facilitate you through that process. So a few little tips here in terms of how you can integrate physical exercise into your life. So like I said earlier, exercise doesn't need to be complicated. It can be, if that suits you, but it doesn't have to be. So it's important that you identify what you enjoy doing. You try and figure out what types of physical exercise that you like, whether it's lifting weights, that's my personal go-to, whether it's jumping in a treadmill or going for a walk. I mean, I live in New Zealand, so there's plenty of nice places to go. There's a lot of nature to get out and explore. And another wee benefit to that is there's a lot of evidence as well saying that just getting outside in nature is quite a positive thing, and it does have its benefits in terms of making you feel better. So yeah, figure out what you like and figure your activity and embrace it and get into it and do it. If things are really bad and you're struggling and you just really can't even just get to the stage where putting your shoes on or going to the gym is an option, maybe seek some help. Go and speak to your GP, and that's something I did way back. I did speak to my doctor, and I did a period of counselling, which for me, I'm not sure if that was the best track for me, because I'd already spent a lot of time trying to figure things out myself, but it was good in terms of just having somebody to offload to, having somebody to speak to, and hey, if that helps you, go for it. So I would say if you're really, really struggling, speak to a professional, and it may be that you might end up being getting some medication. And again, my own experience is I was quite resistant to do something like that. I always saw it as a bit of a cop-out, but I actually did get some SSRIs, which are anxiety meds to help kind of balance your serotonin levels in your brain. And I got to say, I put it off for years, and I feel like a fool that I did. It's made such a change. And I'm still taking them. I don't have any embarrassment to say that. It has certainly helped me manage myself a lot better. And what it did for me is it gave me like a mental break from these horrible negative mindsets which you do have when you have bad anxiety. So don't be ashamed to go and speak to your doctor or another health professional and get the help that you need. And also set reasonable goals, realistic goals. Like I say, it might just be a win to get to the gym twice a week for 20 minutes. That's better than not going to the gym. So don't be hard on yourself. Set goals which you know you can meet. And quite often, if I'm speaking to clients at the gym or new people, I'll often try and set them goals which almost kind of that give them a low bar, so that I know that it's something we'll definitely meet. Because those little goals, getting to that and succeeding and meeting them will make you feel better, and it will just make you more likely to keep at it and eventually set up some healthier habits in the long term. And another thing is, try not to think of exercise, a physical activity, as a chore. Try and look at it as something which is positive, something which will embrace. If you embrace it, it will enrich your life. And if there's days where you don't make it to the gym, don't beat yourself up over that. Just think ahead to the next day and get back in there. Now, like I say, for me, it wasn't just the exercise. Exercise was a really good component where I was physically moving, and there's a lot of benefits to that with your endorphins and stuff, but it was also like a mental time out. It was almost like a meditation session for me as such, where I would have an hour or two of my day where I'd put my earbuds in, I'd listen to a podcast, I'd learn things, and I'd really enjoy that. For me, that was really therapeutic, and that's maybe how you could approach it as well. Just get your earbuds, your headphones in, put some motivating music, maybe not something as melancholy as Depeche Mode. Nothing against Depeche Mode, one of my favourite bands, but you know, put something a bit upbeat on, something that's going to raise your mood and help you feel better in the long run. Other things you can do might be to analyse your barriers and try and think about what's stopping you from getting to the gym. It could be that you feel self-conscious. you may not feel particularly confident in what you do. It might be a cost thing as well, but for every barrier there's often a solution. So if you're feeling self-conscious, just go when the gym's not busy, maybe work out at home initially. If money's an issue, maybe again look at some sort of home training. Or if you don't know what to do, there's plenty of online resources, or there's people like myself who you can come and speak to at the gym, and we'll certainly work with you to find out some sort of plan that works for you. And the last thing I'll mention there is prepare yourself for setbacks and expect obstacles to get in your way. Life is unpredictable. Things will often come along that you can't anticipate. But if you have a mindset where you're expecting that, and you've maybe just the ability to adapt to change when it happens, so prepare for setbacks and prepare for the times where an obstacle will come your way. But get on it. Next day is a new day, and ultimately daily workouts in themselves, it doesn't matter too much. It's more about what you accomplish in a week and a month and a 3-month period. As long as that trend is that you're getting more regular exercise, you're getting progress, you're feeling better, then it is inevitably going to help you. So guys, hopefully that was helpful. I did feel like I kind of spoke quite quickly there. I do that when I get excited about things, and it's something which is passionate for me. Like I say, I've experienced anxiety myself. It was a really horrible experience, and I feel like it did profoundly affect me for a couple of years, to the extent where, looking back, it really did inhibit me from pursuing a lot of things which I wanted to get out of life, whether that was career based or travelling, relationships. So yeah, it can be a really, really kind of detrimental thing. So I would thoroughly encourage you to go and seek help, go and speak to someone if you think you or maybe one of your friends is suffering from anxiety or depression. So team, thanks for listening, and before I do check out, like always, if you've come across this podcast on some sort of social media platform, please give it a share, give it a like, and otherwise tell your friends, family about it as well. Like I say, it's something I'm going to try and keep on top of. I'm going to try and be as prolific as I can in terms of producing good content during the next year. And also, if you do have a topic which you might be interested in having me talk about, somehow get me a message, whether it's on Facebook, flick me a DM, or if you get through my website, coachpete.co.nz, flick me an email through that as well. So team, I'm going to sign out here. I've been babbling on for about half an hour, but hopefully that's been helpful. And don't forget to, if you're at the gym, check out all the Movember donations. There's a QR code up in the gym at Anytime Fitness, so you can donate a wee bit of cash to that. So guys, Pete out. Till next time. See ya.